Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Adoption Happy Hour brought to you by NAAP. We are the National Association of Adoptees and Parents, where it is our mission to elevate our diverse voices by promoting dialogue, understanding, and healing through education, awareness, and connections. I'm Marcie Keithley, co-founder and executive board member, along with Beth Story in the Zoom room. Best waving at you. And Jennifer, like I said, is off enjoying some time with her family. So we want to welcome all of you. If you haven't been here for the very first time, please let us know. We'd like to give you a special shout out. But before we begin, we do have some announcements and a disclosure that we'd like to go over first. And here we go. I just want to remind everyone, this is a public meeting with no guarantee that information or identity is confidential. Portions of this event are recorded and may be shared on our private happy hour group on Facebook and our YouTube channel. So if you don't follow us on Facebook, Adoption Happy Hour, please do so. That's where Paige's recorded replay will show up. Also remain on mute, raise your virtual hand to be recognized, and you're welcome to post questions, comments throughout the evening. If you're experiencing a serious mental health event or suicidal thought, please contact a licensed professional or the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline by dialing 988.
Here is a rundown of our usual programming. First and third Friday is Adoption Happy Hour. Dr. Joyce is usually the second or the third Tuesday of the month. First Families with Amber Jimerson, the second Thursday of the month. She did take July off, but she will be back in August. And then we have Danielle Gaudet, Self-Love Essentials for the Adoption Constellation. Her program this month on the last Thursday will be on the 27th. If you follow us at all, you have to be aware that we are having an event in September, our second annual mini meetup at Pokagon State Park. 10 days yet to reserve your room. Our room block will expire on July 31st, so we want to make sure that you get a room at our good discount rate. And it's going to be a fabulous time of connecting and relaxing and lots of time to reflect on the healing journey that all of us are on. We're at different points in that journey, but we are all on a healing journey. And so we are going to be talking about that this weekend in September. So I will drop some links in the chat for to register and to make your hotel reservation. Marcie, are you ready for the special announcements then?
I am. Becca, you ready? You can take yourself off mute and join us.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, well, we're excited. We just wanted to squeeze in a special announcement for those of you because we are going to be live Operation Fog Lift in Nashville. This is the Nashville edition, and I'm going to let Becca tell you all about it. How many have already seen Reckoning with the Primal Wound? Show of hands. Okay. I'm going to turn it over to you and let you talk for a few minutes. I know you've got to run.
I know I've double booked myself, but this is so important. And I'm so happy to be here again. Yes, I'm Rebecca Autumn Sansom, and I'm excited about these two live events. I'm stoked that y'all are doing live events. Indiana, I wish I could come to that. Maybe I can. But
we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. So next weekend on Saturday, I'm doing LA. I don't know if anyone's near LA, but I'll be out there with Moses Sparrow and Daria and some other adoptees that are in the area. And then what I'm super excited about is Nashville, because this new idea where we're pairing the film and also Liz DeBetta's award-winning play Unmothered. So it's the arts, and we're talking about primal wound theory, but having fun at the end of the day because we have also rented the party bus, that's official, and are excited because Marcie's going to be there both days and actually emceeing the event on Sunday. So it's a small venue, so we decided to do 2 days, have 2 options. It's the same exact event, but the live music adoptee songwriter will be different. So Saturday it'll be Mary Gaucher, and then Sunday will be Chris Wiley, who is a friend that the other event I'm doing for RAMPed, the Recording Artists and Music Professionals with Disabilities, is premiering a music video. And I met him through that. And you know how it goes, where you're working with somebody and then you discover they're also an adoptee. So he is amazing and was willing to come down for Sunday. So that's going to be a treat. But yeah, I'm so excited about this. I don't know if y'all know Liz DeVetta or have seen Unmothered. I think she performed it in New York City last November, but I would love to see anybody there. Is anyone near Nashville? Sort of. There's still a few tickets on Saturday and Sunday. So, and let me know if you want to do the party bus, because we got a generous donation. So that will pretty much be covered. I just need to know who wants to come. But thank you.
It's good to see you, and I'm really excited about it. Seeing everyone, and it's just going to be a fun-filled 2 days. I know personally, I went to see Mary Gaucher just 2 weeks ago at the Bluebird Cafe, and it's so hard to get her tickets. Okay, they go on sale and they're gone like in 15 minutes. So I had to email her to get tickets, but I made that work. So if you know, especially our Kentucky peeps, you know, Adoptees Connect, they've got. You know, I know there's a group there in Lexington. We'll have to reach out to Karen Nova and make sure that she knows what's going on in Nashville. Oh, she's coming. Okay. Pam's coming. So yeah, but I know there's still some tickets, but it is a small, intimate space, which is really cool. I mean, it's really
cool. I like that. I like that for what we're doing. But again, this is the pilot. So if it goes well, you know, we could do it in other places. So that's the hope. And if you want to find tickets, they're at reckoningwiththeprimalwound.com. You can find them pretty easily, or email me at info@reckoningwiththeprimalwound.com.
Great.
But
wonderful.
And I'll see you soon. I've got to jump.
Okay.
Off, but it was so good to see everyone.
Take care. Thank you for giving us some time tonight. Bye-bye.
Bye, Marcie. Bye, Beth.
Okay. That's great. That's great. Yeah, I'm real excited about that event. That's going to be a lot of fun. So yeah, I'm about a 2-hour drive from Nashville. So I'm excited to go down there again. Okay, so let's go ahead and introduce our spotlight guest this evening, Paige Strickland, our very own Paige. How are you?
Doing great. How is everybody?
Doing wonderful. It's so great to have you on. You know, you were, you know, I don't mind sharing with the group. You were part of the original adoption happy hour planning stage, and how we just kind of accidentally did this, fell into this, and here we are, what, almost 4 years later, and we're still doing something.
It started with COVID when a get together had to be canceled, right?
Our conference had to be canceled, so we were like, how do we stay in touch? And you and I know Lynn's here. We're part of that group too. David Bull, Richard Law. There was a couple of us just got together and said, hey, how can we keep our community together, since we, you know, our conference got canceled and everybody was, you know, had all these questions and what was going on, and we decided to just do a Zoom call on a Friday night and came up with the Adoption Happy Hour name. And we thought it was just going to hold us over through COVID. And here we are, and we're still here. We love it. So Paige, I'm going to turn this all over to you. And let's go ahead and find out what's going on with you.
All right. Well, I gave the title of the adoptee flight. Here's my thinking behind that. And I'm going to have to read off my phone because my printer decided to be a turkey and not print everything, which would make me have better eye contact with people. So anyway, we can think of the word flight in many ways, but being that this is our happy hour time, I'm going with flight as a variety or a sampling. I will be sharing with you all over several segments of my adoptee experience, dealing with reunion, synchronicity, writing, and simply just being adopted. When Jennifer Falsing asked me to pick a topic, I thought it's hard to discuss one aspect only because everything ties together, at least it does for me. So I chose the picture of the egg flight because it's unique, just like each of us as adoptees, biological family members, adoptive parents, NPEs, or just curious and concerned individuals. Plus, I think we're all good eggs. I chose the image of the drink flight with empty glasses to show that everyone is free to choose their beverages of choice, just as we are free to have our own opinions about our experiences because we are all experts. This picture symbolizes and reminds us that no two members of one subgroup, like adoptees, first parents, etc., have the exact same life events or beliefs, which is why all of our get-togethers, whether on Zoom or in person, are so fascinating and rewarding. So tonight, flight is not about avoiding or running away. It is about our individuality and how there is a place for everyone at the table. So, okay, let's talk about reunion. Some of you here are also in reunion to some degree. Some of you may wonder how to go about approaching the other parties, and some of you may feel terrified to attempt this. I've been in all of those situations. My reunion came about as a slow roll, which was good for everyone involved, including myself. It was relatively fast considering it was the late 80s, but it was still a slow roll, especially by today's standards with all the technology that you can find somebody in 5 minutes. Reunions, which happen fast and furious, that they may feel overwhelming and surreal. Just, it's like, it's too much. It's just too weird and too much. And I even had those feelings back in the day because it was just such a new thing and a thing I thought I'd never be experiencing, and then it happened anyway. I don't recommend name and find the people you're looking for on social media, but my advice would be to take it slowly, because it's better for everybody, including yourself. So appreciate the moments and the process in small chunks. Every bit of it counts, even if you think it doesn't. You look back later and you realize it does. Let information sink in at a pace that you are comfortable with. For me, it was receiving my OBC, that's original birth certificate, for anybody who doesn't know the initials, and seeing both my birth mother's and birth father's full names for the very first time. Just, it's crazy. It made everything real. And it's rare to see a birth father's name. It just usually never happens, but there it was on mine. I got lucky, and I received the paperwork in April. And then I had to pause until June before taking the next step. And part of that was because I was so involved in school as a teacher. There was just no way I could do this. It was too big. I could not do this and deal with the last quarter of school and final exams and graduations and all the other things you deal with as a teacher that last quarter of school. It's like holiday time, only without presents. So had to put everything off until June. But when I say I took a pause, I paused my actions, but not really in my mind. It's all I thought about. Initially, every few pieces of paper in a big envelope, they were overwhelming enough just looking at all my information. So what I did to fill that time and to kind of pre-prepare myself, I read Betty Jean Lifton's Lost and Found, and also I found a book called Search for Anna Fisher to fill time and to kind of just get my head in the right space. There weren't a lot of adoption books out there that were geared for most people like us. There were books about how to adopt, or so you've adopted a baby, but there weren't a lot of books about adoption that the rest of us might have been interested in. So I had a summer job in a mall and there was a Walden Books next door, if you remember those stores. And break time, I went in there and bought some books. So that's how I kind of got started with learning things. So I like to consider my reunion experiences beginning with first discovering as much pertinent information about my biological parents as I possibly could prior to actual contact. I figured the more I know, the better off I am. I go in with my eyes as wide open as I possibly can. I didn't have a lot of fantasies or images in my mind of what they were like. I had gone so long just kind of in denial of being adopted and hating it and not wanting to discuss it or have it be a part of my life, to all of a sudden wanting it to be a part of my life and facing it. But I never had a lot of thoughts about what do they look like, what do they act like, or anything like that. It just, none of it made sense to me. And I just, until I got the pieces of paper, and then my mind started going. I had the advantage of living in the same city where I was born and raised, and I spent long days hiking between the downtown public library, looking at old crisscross directories. I don't even think those exist anymore, but didn't have internet, so turned to books. So that's what I did. And I went to the county courthouse for public records that had existed. And since I had names, I was able to do that. And I had initially been told that my birth parents were married, which didn't really add up, right? It's just that, like, who does that? What happened there? You know, there's got to be there's a story here somewhere going on. And so that's what sent me to the courthouse. But again, I didn't find that kind of information, but you got to start somewhere. I did find other unexpected information, and that led me in the right direction anyway. So I savored, though, each tidbit of info that I uncovered, even if it was like a former address from 1971, or I found yearbook photos in the library, because libraries sometimes carry old school yearbooks. And if you know where your people went to high school or junior high, you might find yearbook pictures. And so I got lucky there. Even found some on my aunt, as well as my birth mother. I used all the small bits to basically build a world for my birth family that was their reality, the world they lived and worked in, where they went to school, and the world of all the news events that shaped the times, what was going on in 1970, Watergate, and anything else that was going on, any big sporting events, or anything that was kind of shaping the times, because that's what they were living in. And then that would help me understand them a little bit better. And maybe things, if we both lived through those times, things we could relate to. So another thing I did during my search was to make a list of questions that I wanted to ask, things that I would want to say if I only had one chance. It's kind of like what they call the 2-minute elevator speech. So if you only got to ask like a few things or say a few things, what would that be? So those were just things I could prepare myself for ahead of time. And I kept it light, things, even if it's just stuff like, what's your favorite sport, or what do you like to watch on TV? Mostly, I just wanted to know my family of origin as people, just normal, everyday people. Like, you want to know your neighbors, or you want to know a friend at school or something like that, just to know them as human beings first before anything else. I wasn't ready for deep personal information. I just wanted to socialize to start out, and it was safe, and you want to feel safe. I figured the deeper information could come later, and I wasn't ready to ask super serious and personal questions right out of the bat. If I'm not comfortable with it, I couldn't imagine anybody else being comfortable with it. So it turns out, though, a little bit fast forward, when we did meet, I happened into very chatty people. So they're much chattier than I am, but I think that's just because of the environment they all were raised in and raised their kids in versus the environment I was raised in. But they're all chatty people. So we never have a problem with keeping a conversation going. We never have a problem with awkward silence. Everybody talks. Very chatty people. So, and they'll tell you all kinds of things, all kinds of information, but it's kind of fun that way. So Through all the research, though, I learned that my father was being laid off at his job because his workplace for decades was shutting down. That was on the news every day. They were talking about where he worked shutting down. And remember, everybody was local. Everybody was in Cincinnati here. So, you know, what I saw on TV, local news, they were getting the same local news on TV. So it was kind of like, that's a way I can connect. He was a General Motors automobile inspector, and the plant was closing down. Anybody familiar with Cincinnati? It was in Norwood. Oddly enough, though, I was laid off at that same time from my first teaching job. So we were kind of going through something together, but would have never known it about one another at that point. I knew how upsetting that might feel to find yourself suddenly unemployed. Sometimes if you're laid off, even if it's like not your fault, you know, in my case, it was because the school was lacking funds and the enrollment dropped, and it was just, yeah, not the premier place to send your kid anymore. I still felt rejected, right? That rejection feeling, even when it's not your fault, you can still feel the rejection feeling. And a job, that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother happy hour. how your job can make you feel. But because it was happening to both him and me at the same time, that's kind of like the first synchronicity, but we will circle back. We will come back to synchronicity. I want to talk about that too. I knew better though than to go knocking on his door or calling him at that time, you know, hey y'all, guess who I am? Not cool, not the right time. So I just had to leave him alone, and I took another tact for trying to find people. So again, I got to speed forward a little bit. First people I found and met in person was not my birth mother. I found my birth mother's ex-husband and his new wife, and they lived 20 minutes from my house. We're all over the place, same town, never knew it. Okay, they were listed in the local directory, but had an unlisted phone number. What is this with people in unlisted numbers? So I wrote a letter because I did have the address and I found him. And I told him that I was seeking family history information and how might I contact my birth mother. And I didn't tell him though that she was my birth mother. I just said, I'm looking for this woman. Here's her name. Could you please put me in contact with her? There's some urgent family business that I need to share. And I was only doing family history, and that was the other part of it. I knew I could have been a secret and I'd blow her cover if I said too much. I didn't know, but I knew that could be a risk. So it turned out though that he knew everything. But he regretted to inform me that she was deceased. So that kind of explained why I wasn't finding her in the directories after a certain point in time. But she passed away in 1976 from failing heart valves from rheumatic fever when she was a kid. So just wasn't treated properly and in a timely way. They were in the hills and hollers of Virginia at the time, and poverty, just, you know, no means to get to a doctor, that kind of thing. So she had some heart valve damage that it happened. And she also, as she became an adult, she worked hard, she played hard. She lived like life was short, but she told everyone about me and she kept no secrets. So maybe we'll never know, because I can't have that conversation with her, but maybe she kind of knew she better tell people because that would be the only chance there was. So I don't know. The weird thing was I was pretty sure, I had it in the back of my head that she could be dead. I just kind of thought that would be one reason why you can't keep a baby, you know, if you didn't live. So when I was informed by the ex-husband, they'd been a divorce, but on a okay enough relationship basis. I wasn't super shocked when I found this out. It was like, oh, yeah, I thought about that. Okay, sucks, but wow, I kind of already knew it. So I had mourned the loss, I think, for her years before, when I assumed she was dead. When I first had that thought, I was a college student when I first that hit me, that could be. And so I would never have the chance for a reunion with my birth mother or to learn her side of the story, which, that's a shame. I did nothing though that anybody can do about that. And a lot of time has gone by, but I am in reunion with my two sisters for two other daughters and their families. Plus, well, the aunties are all passed away, but all the cousins and the nieces and nephews, there's a ton of people. We're all over the place. So I do have some pictures that I can show, or Beth maybe can show, that'll show, let's see, she'll have to scroll a little bit through the text and then get to the pictures. So I'm not good at technology, so I had to send things the best way I could. So the first couple of pictures here, that's me with my sister. She's 18 months older than I am. My birth mother was able to keep her because she had family support the first time she got pregnant and was single. But by the time I came along, she didn't have the same family support. Plus she got sick. The heart valves were giving out. So she couldn't keep me. And my birth father ended up marrying someone else. So the first two pictures there are my older sister and me, and then one picture with the little girl there, that's my niece. And these were in 1988 when the pictures were taken. The picture of the two of us, that's my younger sister. So I'm like the middle kid. I'm the middle daughter. We met, we didn't plan on it. We nearly dressed alike that day and did not plan on that. And that was one of the first things we're looking at each other going, is this what twins feel like? Because that's kind of what it felt like, looking at a twin, like a possible twin. And we were in the house where my birth mother had lived. That was her sofa. Her oven was in the kitchen in the background back there. And it was weird, but in a good way. It was a good weird. Weird, but good weird. And then there's one more picture under that. Again, it's me with my younger sister. That was last night we were together before I had to fly back to Cincinnati. So I can say that we've been a family there for almost 35 years now. It's been totally successful. My sisters currently live in the Portland, Oregon area. I love going out there, by the way. I think I saw there's people on here tonight from around the Portland area. Hi, Portland. It's awesome. I love it out there. I'm going to go back. So I'm hoping next summer to make another trip back there. It's just so cool. And there's so much to see. Every time there's something new. We have cousins all over the place, all over the country. We don't get to visit often because obviously it's expensive to go to Portland, but at least a place to stay, but it's expensive to get there. And flying these days is just trickier than it used to be. But we do a lot of FaceTime. We have a sister cousins group text where we share pictures of our kids, pets, tacos, and tell jokes, things like that. Things, we can just talk about anything. We've been to our kids' weddings and we just make the most of all of our time together anytime we can. So and there's one picture, if Beth can scroll again, there's one other picture there of me with my two sisters at the niece's wedding. That one picture where there was me and my sister and the little girl in it, that was a niece. That was the wedding we went to. So it's, again, my older sister's on the left, I'm in the middle, my younger sister's on the right side in that picture. So we were having a good time that night. So yeah, we just make every moment count. All right, so back to my birth father. So that's got my birth mother's reunion side going. I left him alone until September of 1987. And he'd had 2 or 3 months to deal with his job loss. And in the meantime, I'd found another teaching job. So I felt less needy and less rejected and more ready to face reunion and anything that might happen with that. And he had an unlisted phone number, again, unlisted. So I wrote him a letter and I enclosed a copy of my original birth certificate so he would understand, not think I was some scammy person. And it took him a week to call me back. So he said he'd been away on a fishing trip in Tennessee. And it sounded like he was pretty much at peace with early retirement. So that was a good thing. We had a good phone conversation and agreed to meet for dinner at a local Denny's in 1 week. So we sat at that Denny's for 3 hours in a booth with my husband and exchanged life stories. And we took pictures together, and we agreed to meet again at another restaurant called Sorrento's locally here. And in another week, and my husband and I were going to go and meet him there, but he never showed up. He did, however, call the restaurant and had someone tell me that one of his kids had been in a car accident, nothing serious, but he had to go pick her up. And he'd call me later to reschedule, but he never called back, ghosted. So Beth, I think there's a set of pictures coming next. That would be pictures of the night I did meet him in person at the Denny's. So it's past that one. There we go. There we go. That's me and him in those pictures. 80s hair. And it was super hot, and I was wearing a wool sweater because it had been cold. When I talked to him on the phone, I said, I'm wearing a purple sweater. And he said, okay, I'm going to be in my black Bengals jacket. Okay, well, you can take a jacket off and just hold it in your hands. And when I met him, he was holding the jacket in his hands. Well, I couldn't exactly take my sweater off. And yeah, it was hot and sweaty. And I was nervous and so forth. But I was like, had to identify him somehow, and he had to recognize me somehow. So those were the pictures from the night we met. It was October 5th, 1987. So that's an important date. I'll come back to that date in a minute. Okay, 16 years later in 2002. So a bunch of time went by, right? He ghosted. 2002. After coming home from seeing the Mamma Mia play with my mom and my daughters, we went out for a Mother's Day girls' night together, went downtown to see the Mamma Mia play. It was kind of when it was still kind of new, and not everybody, I don't know who's seen it or knows that the subplot in that movie is a birth father story. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but I won't spoil anything but about the show if you haven't seen it, but it was just, I'm sitting there watching it from a completely different perspective than probably most other people in the audience, going, birth father. Yeah. Where other people are just like waiting for the next ABBA song, so but we had fun. It was a great show. But there was a call when I got home. It was on my answering machine, and it was his oldest daughter saying that she's going to call me back tomorrow at 11 a.m., which would have been a Saturday. And I was prepared to hear that he died and that someone must have found the contact information I'd sent him years before. So I'm just braced myself. She did call the next morning. She said everybody was fine. He was fine. Everyone's fine. But he finally came out about me to his family. He'd been embarrassed about his indiscretion in 1961, and he hadn't told anybody. But we could tell by doing the math that once my birth mother was pregnant with me, but he wouldn't marry her, it was probably because he was going with someone else who turned out to be his current wife, and he'd gotten her pregnant as well. So my sister on his side and I are only 9 months apart, and I was born 2 months early. So that's not difficult math to figure that out. So basically he had 2 girlfriends pregnant, chose the other one to marry. And I do remember him saying, this is kind of like the first piece of dad advice I ever got from him, is when you marry someone, you marry the family, you marry into the family. You don't just deal with the spouse, you deal with everybody, unless you move to some remote zone and never see people. And he probably made the right decision in his case, the right person to marry, because he ended up married to his wife for 52 years. And it was as good as a marriage can be. So, I don't fault him for ditching my birth mother. And, so that's kind of where we're at on that. So to sum it all up, I've been in full reunion with my birth father's side now for about 21 years. He passed away, but I see everyone else a lot since we all live here in town. And in fact, in June, I saw everybody 2 times. We had a baby shower for a niece and nephew, and then and that baby's due anytime now. And I could get a text while I'm sitting here, who knows? And then there was a birthday party for another nephew. So yeah, we get together as frequently as we can. And I'm sure when football time comes around, we'll be getting together a lot too. So watching games together. And we shared Christmases, Thanksgivings, birthdays, again, weddings, things like that. So that's been kind of fun to be able to do all those things together. Even my mom that raised me has been in on some of the family fun things to do. So that's kind of cool. My mom who raised me was very cool about the whole experience, and her reaction was, "What took you so long? What I would have done the same thing." So that was about the best thing I think an adoptive parent could say to somebody when they decide to start searching, and she's a curious person that like has a lot of questions and likes her answers. And yeah, I see Nan just put up Who Day. So sorry about that. We're Bengal people over here. So, in fact, I even gave the eulogy at my birth father's funeral. So, and there's another picture, Beth, if you wouldn't mind. This is a picture with my birth sisters on my birth father's side. And so yeah, scroll, and it'll come up in a second. There it is. We're obviously not at a funeral in this picture. So we were at a birthday party here, but we go out, we have fun. We're silly people. And yeah, we just have a good time together. So we've had a lot of fun girls' nights and things like that. So this is kind of a great segue into the synchronicity part of what I was going to present about. It is a thing. And it happens a lot. And if you haven't experienced a synchronicity event or more than one of them in any form of adoption, NPE, anything experience like that, you will, or you have and just haven't realized it yet. Lynn Grubb, hi Lynn, you're out there somewhere, I know. So hi, Lynn. Lynn and I did a presentation on this at one of the NAAP conferences. I think it was about 4 years ago. And we described synchronicity as meaningful coincidences or even unexplained feelings of curiosity or attachment that you have until you come to find out some who, where, when, why information later on. And you go, oh, that. So it's very possibly happened to almost anybody here listening today. Me and my birth father losing our jobs at the same time was just the start of synchronicity. That was like, that can happen to a lot of people. But get this with our names, all right? I can't make this up, okay? I'm not that good. Okay, his oldest daughter, my birth father's oldest daughter, is named Tammy Marie. She married a guy named Mike. My birth mother's oldest daughter is also named Tammy Marie, and she married a guy named Mike. And therefore, my kids have 2 sets of Aunt Tammy's and Uncle Mike's. How does this happen, right? My birth mother used to work at a local bakery here in town. And Beth, there's a picture here of my birth mother next in the line of stuff at that bakery. Somebody took her picture at work. My adoptive mother used to shop in this bakery, and she'd send me in there with the money to pick up the orders. So anybody local, it was Barton's Bakery in Montgomery on Montgomery Road. So my birth mother was one of the ladies in the white uniforms working in there at the time. It was an old school mom and pop bakery. So and they gave out free cookies to the kiddies when kids came in. So my birth mother probably gave me some free cookies. Thank you. And possibly even baked me some birthday cakes. So that's kind of a interesting thing when I found out looking through those city directories, which would list people's jobs sometimes, that she was an employee there. I just was like, oh my God, the donuts. Oh my goodness, the stuffed jelly rolls. Oh, the cookies. You never know sometimes. So now here's synchronicity with names again. My maiden last name is Adams, and my married last name is Strickland. My birth mother's mom, my birth grandmother, that is, was once married to a Strickland and later on married an Adams. They're no relation that we know of, at least not yet. We're doing family trees, but nothing's come up yet. My adoptive mom's name is Josh. It's a nickname, but it's what all her friends call her. My birth nephew is Josh. My husband is Scott, and another nephew is also named Scott. I have a daughter named Megan, and I have a birth niece named Megan. We didn't plan that. It was before we knew one another. My other daughter is Jenny, and I have a cousin Jenny. And I also have 2 cousin Sandys. So it's like all these duplicate names. And like, how does this happen? And, you can't plan this stuff. And then my original, this is the one that, like, yeah. Are you sitting down? My original birth name on my birth certificate was Julie Ann Lewis. My husband's brother married a girl named Julie Ann Lewis. She's not related. And she happened to be from the Portland, Oregon area originally. So where my sisters currently are living. How does this happen? So, and then synchronicities sometimes happen in jobs too. My day job currently is working. I'm a teacher, a licensed teacher, but I'm working as an aide right now. Best kept secret job ever. I'll just put that out there. My day job is working as a special education aide for kids with mental or physical disabilities. 2 of my sisters, one on each side of the family, 2 of them work as aides with adults with developmental disabilities. We were all drawn to very similar lines of work without ever knowing it. And then one of my other sisters is a school library aide. So we have a lot of things in common with our careers. So that's kind of cool too. It's easy to talk shop with one another sometimes. So now here's another photo coming up. This is a photo when Beth pulls this up. It's a photo of my daughter and she's holding a baby in her arms. This is not her kid. This is a cousin. My daughter is a nurse, and her birthday is February 1st. She happened to be working in post-labor and delivery the day her baby cousin was born, also on February 1st, but of course in a different year. The baby came in 2018. So that's kind of cool. Now, had my daughter knew that her first cousin and his wife were in there having a baby. She did not see the birth. They don't let family employees do that typically, but she was there after the baby was born. So that was kind of cool that happened that way. And imagine if they had never known one another and she was just this worker that came in to go, well, take your baby to be weighed now or something, so that's kind of a cool thing, that we got to experience, she got to experience. So the day I first said hello to my birth father and met a blood relative person for the very first time was, as I said, Monday, October 5th of 1987. And the date we said goodbye to him at his funeral was October 5th, but in 2015, also on a Monday. So yeah, chills. It's kind of amazing how those things happen. You cannot plan it. So with all those great moments and great things going on, why wouldn't I want to write? Okay, so that kind of leads into the next part of the flight here. Why wouldn't I want to write about these things? So I'm pretty sure the desire to write, though, came as soon as I could form words and read books. I've always been a word nerd. I knew I wanted to make books one day. Luckily, I was encouraged to write and rewarded with praise and good grades for every summary, essay, research paper, or creative piece I wrote in school. Thank you, Mr. West. Right, Nan? Thank you, Mr. West. Yeah, I saw him in Kroger not too long ago, by the way. Anyway, writing saved my GPA, and I think that should be a book title. But on the other hand, math almost ruined my GPA. But reading and writing were there to save and reward me. And stories and TV shows and movies about people who wrote made me feel charged up, and they still do. If you've ever had that experience after you've watched something and you're like, yeah, and for some people it's maybe sports and they get all motivated and then they're going to exercise or they're going to go out there and kick balls around or something, and sometimes for me it was, oh, I'm going to write the great American novel. Yeah. So that was just my experience. So I kept diaries and journals from grade 5 through college. And I kept before birth journals for both of my kids. And I even did that for my grandkids. So I've got 3 little grandkid pre-birth journals for them. A cool thing that happened during reunion on my birth mother's side was finding a local cousin who was also an aspiring writer. And when she and I met and we were talking about, what do you do for fun? We were like, oh my God, you like writing too? Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And she later formed a writing group. And for years, we were meeting at her house once a month on Sunday evenings. And that was really the first time outside of turning in assignments at school that I felt comfortable with sharing my written work with other people. So I have to credit my cousin Joy there. And she has since moved out of town and took another job. But those were some great years. Those were some really fun times. When my cousin's work life and schedule changed, she had to disband the group, but I found another group here in town. And I think it was in 2003 or 2004. I'd already started writing the first memoir book by that point, but it was still just a bunch of writing about being adopted and growing up. And I started reading other people's memoirs to learn by example. They weren't necessarily adoption-centered stories because very few still existed then. But as Amazon and Google became more of a thing, I started to find great books and some examples of books that I read that I learned from. Gene Strauss's Beneath a Tall Tree. Anybody's read that one? I think that was the first one I ever read. Linda Hoy's Two Hearts, An Adoptee's Journey from Grief to Gratitude, if anybody's familiar with that book. And I read the late Denise Rossell's birth mother memoir called Second Chance Mother. Since I was very much wanted to get the perspective of a birth mother, since I didn't have that opportunity firsthand. And it was a great story. She explained really well. And then next I read Patrick McMahon's book, Becoming Patrick, because I wanted to learn about the male perspective. And at that point, I don't know that there were any other male adoptee books out there. He might have been the first, or at least one of the first that I was aware of. Very much like my personal research before reunion, I wanted to study how to write an adoption memoir. So I turned to books by individuals who have the best expertise, people who were adopted or had relinquished. And so that's why I chose what I chose to read. And then I kind of like life stories anyway, I'll be honest. I just bios and personal stories. I kind of, that's my thing. My first go-to if I'm going to like, well, I have to pick a book to read. What am I going to read? Find somebody's life story and read that. I began my story writing one summer afternoon when my daughters had a 3-week day camp, and I dropped them off and I hung out in a nearby Starbucks or a grocery store coffee shop for 3 hours every day. Freedom. So I'd never been kid free before. And that's how I spent my time. And that started in 2002. And I was still using a pen and spiral notebooks if I wasn't home to write. So I got about 10 chapters written then. I couldn't tell you what that equates to in page numbers, but it was 10 chapters worth of writing. And my kids had been asking about how we were all related to all these people all over the place. And they knew I was adopted and had 2 families, but they couldn't separate the groups since they'd always known everyone, or at least knew of family members. Again, when I reunited with my birth father and his family, my kids went through that process with me. I'll never forget standing on the sidewalk in front of my sister's house on the day we first met and seeing my nieces and nephews and my kids' first cousins, and how you 6, 7, 10, and 12-year-olds still were amazed at the physical similarities. They're looking at each other going, oh, like that. I mean, it was a real unreal experience. So anyway, back to the writing thing. After that, I had to rely on school holiday breaks when I could stay up late at night, like we're talking 3 a.m., writing my brains out and not have to worry about getting up for work or school the next day. If I didn't write new material, praying for snow days so I could stay up all night and write because I knew I wouldn't have to get up the next day. Yeah, if I didn't write new material, I spent time transposing everything I had from the spiral notebooks to Word on my desktop. And it took till the summer of 2008 to complete the first draft. So, we're looking at 6 years. But 2013, then I had the book edited professionally and then self-published into Akin to the Truth. And there's what it looks like if you haven't already seen it. And I have to credit my mom with the cover design. She took the photo in 1962. And when we took it to a book cover designer, they tweaked it a little bit and enhanced the color and everything. But that's where that design came from a picture my mom took. And it's the social worker holding me getting out of her car. There's a Volkswagen in the background here. So, which they had to cut off a little bit, which in the real photo, you can see more of the car. But that's where that came from. And I also have to credit my husband with the title, because he came up with a punny kin to the truth title on that. So that was the origin of that book. And I'd take segments to my writing group, my monthly writing group, and get feedback and questions and things. So I would know how to either re-explain something or choose better words or whatever. And all in all, it was a slow process, but that's okay since I had the time. My kids were getting older and one was going off to college. And then while I was finishing up the first draft, a different writing urge came to me to write about another part of my life that I hadn't included in my first book. So I took a little brain break, started writing the other thing that was kind of hammering at my brain to compose. And that turned out to be the opening for the sequel book, After the Truth. And so here's what After the Truth looks like. So I call these two books the siblings, the big one and the little one, because this is physically the bigger book anyway. And in Akin to the Truth, I purposely cut it off where I did, where I'm en route to meet my new sisters for the first time, because I had to draw the line somewhere. You just have to call time. Otherwise, you're writing like War and Peace or something. And that's not realistic. And I also wanted to cut it off before the time when my kids were born, because I didn't want it to be about that. I wanted it to be about adoption and reuniting and growing up and that kind of thing. So I had a big enough story. So with Akin to the Truth's focus was on growing up and how it felt and the experiences that tied into adoption. The subplot was about the relationship I had with my dad, who basically raised me and his struggles. And basically I was coming out of my personal adoption fog, if you will. At the same time, he was coming out as gay. So it made for a real interesting parallel about two kinds of coming out. And coming out isn't easy. That should also be a book title. After the Truth is more about being adopted, how it constantly impacts life as a parent, a spouse, an employee, and a friend, and how my birth father finally came around again in my life. So I didn't really mean to leave the first book as a cliffhanger, but it kind of happened that way because of how things turned out in 2002. When he came around, he, in his own kind of way, he had to come out too. It's a much shorter book because it covers a shorter span of time. Plus, I think my writing has evolved and I'm less wordy than I used to be. I get more to the point. And I currently have a work in progress, which is pretty much finished unless something very major happens or I have some sort of big pop-up memory that I must include, but I don't think I do. I think I'm really done with it as far as a first draft goes. My work in progress is currently called Born Adopted and Finding My Truth. And how that book has come about, last school year, I was working with special needs students in a junior high in language arts class. Yay, language arts class. The students had a unit on books in verse, not necessarily rhyming books, but books in verse, so free verse, not necessarily rhyming, but the idea occurred to me to rewrite this, the first book, not so much the second book, but the first book, as a book in verse to bring the adoption messages to the younger generation of readers who either lack the time or in some way are just unable to read a traditional book, but want or need to read something. And I wanted to make it reader friendly to anyone, but especially busy people with shorter attention spans, or even reading disabilities who might feel intimidated by something much larger and much wordier. So like graphic novels, books in verse are very popular with the young adult, teen and tween readers these days. And it's a challenge to convince older readers about the validity of things we believe, and to make any kind of headway. But educating the younger set is the next approach to take. That's my teachery opinion on that. So at the Right to Know NAAP conference back in late March of this year, I read a couple of excerpts from the new book. And if we have time, do we have time? I'd be happy to share something again. Otherwise, I'm ready for questions about anything regarding anything.
Yeah, Paige, why don't you go ahead and read us a little excerpt and then we'll
Okay.
open it up for questions,
Okay.
okay?
Okay, I got two things. One is a thing I did read at the conference and it's short. And then another thing that I did not read at the conference because I don't want to do a full repeat. Okay, so this is the opening of the newer book. That isn't born yet, but it will be. Okay, I was born adopted. No, that's not exactly right. I was born and then I was adopted. I have never known life any other way but being born adopted. The same way a person knows no other way if they were born with missing fingers or toes. Being adopted and knowing this fact since the day you were born, being born with a missing appendage, you could cover up. Not all that different if you think about it. And for a long time, you don't know the difference between being regular born into a family versus being adopted, or being a person with 8 or 9 digits instead of 10, until the day you do know the difference. Either way, once you are aware, you can tell something is missing and you are not like other people. But you can survive, you can do things, you can stuff your fists bravely into your pockets and march forward with strength and determination and act like everybody else. No one has to know your private business. You don't have to let your missing parts define your whole life. You can have common interests with others, be good at school, sports, or your job. You can own a house one day, but some part of you is not there, and you have to live with something lost every day, every frickin' day. So that's the first one. The second is an excerpt, I call it Family Reunion 1974, because that's when this took place. My parents throw a big party in the backyard for my grandma. Her 80th birthday is coming up. She's in the early stage of dementia, but she still gets around okay, for now. Mom says people used to have a lot of family reunions back in the old days. Reunions don't happen often enough these days. Grandma Frances doesn't need birthday presents. She needs to see her family. So people come from all over. They didn't expect Cousin Weird Will to RSVP yes, but he did. Cousin Weird Will is the family black sheep, but he has to be invited regardless. He's a relative. Will speaks out when he disagrees. He tells the truth. And if no one wants to be reminded, even if no one wants to be reminded, he is creative and intellectual. He's kind of an old hippie. He's a writer. I can't wait to meet Weird Will. So, young lady, would you tell me about being adopted? Huh? What? I don't want to discuss this. He has no clue that's a secret I keep. He just doesn't know it's a secret. Can't hold that against him. He's a writer and he asks questions. He questions what other people think is the truth. I'm a wannabe writer, so I get that. I guess my adoption can be a secret, not secret thing with Weird Will, just for today. I don't know what to say about adoption because I haven't figured out my feelings yet. My life is good in a lot of ways, but telling Will adoption sucks doesn't seem appropriate. People expect you to say things like, oh, I'm so thankful. Everything and everyone is perfect. I would never dare search for my birth parents. I tell Will, I just don't know because I don't think about it much. That's a true, not true statement. He asked if I would ever want to know who my biological people are. I'm scared of them. I don't know why, but I am. Maybe it's because they're like ghosts to me, and dead people are terrifying. They are there, not their people. I tell Will I'm not sure, and I switch the subject to writing and journals and what it must be like to live in New York City, where glamorous folks live. I ask if he's friends with anyone famous there, but he says no. He has seen famous people in restaurants and walking down the sidewalk occasionally. I am in awe of his brushes with fame. My parents still think Will is a black sheep after the party, but I find him fascinating because he lives his truth. Will, who uses his free will to follow his heart. Will I ever know what my truth really is? Will I ever be able to follow my heart instead of a bunch of adults' rules? And that's that one. And the story about Weird Will, that actually started with a high school writing assignment junior year. Mr. West again.
Beautiful. Great job. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. When's the book coming out? Do you have a tentative date?
I don't have a timeline yet. My next move is to work on some professional editing and then go from there, and then come up with some kind of a cover design. And I've decided, like, this is really springtime looking, and this one's really fall looking. I think I want to go with summer, but then I've got to come up with something summery, or have a cover designer come up with something summery, but I'm still thinking on that one. It'll hit me. It'll be right when it hits me. So some things just happen in their own timeline, and writing books is one of those things sometimes.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing. I'd like to go ahead now and open it up to attendees. Susan's got her hand up first, it looks like. If you'd like to go ahead and lead us off with questions for Paige.
Oh, hi, Paige. I think I'm
Hi,
off
Susan.
mute here. Hi, I enjoyed your presentation very much,
Thank you.
and I had a few questions for you.
Uh-huh.
The first one, I just want to keep your family tree straight.
Yeah.
So
We have a family jungle. It's not a
you've got a
family.
lot of sisters.
Yeah.
So your biological parents, they did not have another child, but you.
Correct.
Okay, so these are all half siblings.
They're all halves, right? But all of us, none of us use the half word. We're all sisters, but yeah, technically, biologically, we're halves.
So the other thing I was curious about is, are your adoptive parents both still alive? And how have they taken to you having all these different reunions? Are they a part of it at all?
My
Have
mother
they been
is.
okay with it?
Yeah, my mother is 93. Currently, she's in a nursing home because she broke her leg. That's another hot mess story. But she's cool. She knows what's going on. She knows who the family members are. She has met most of them, including meeting my birth father, including having Thanksgiving with my birth father and his family. And so she's hung out with people, and that's been all good. My dad that raised me, he's no longer living. He passed away in 1996 in Florida, and he was not so good with it, but also knew it was not his place, and he kind of just knew what lane to stay in, if you think of it that way. He just kind of, one place he felt a little threatened, like he was somebody I was trying to replace him, and which was totally not the case, but he had his own personal issues and things going on that he needed to work on himself. And so I just knew, okay, I don't on purpose bring it up and go, hey, Dad, guess what? Because that would just be hurtful, but if he asked a question, I just answer the question, and that was that.
It didn't really estrange the two of you.
No, not at all.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
You said your natural mother, that she had a daughter that's older than you, but at that time she also wasn't married, but she kept her.
She was able to keep her because the birth grandma, who actually was her grandmother, so technically our great grandmother, was basically the family daycare lady, and she was watching everybody's kids while everybody went to work. And it was kind of like, I'll help out everybody once, but twice, I'm just not, she was in her 70s by that point, and watching 5, 6 kids all day long, or evenings if people worked in the evenings, and it just wasn't possible. I know what it's like. I'm grandma. When we have 2, I'm kind of like, oh, what do we do? It's chaos. It's fun chaos. It's cute, but it's chaos. So I can't imagine.
Then you had one more younger sibling who she was able to keep?
When my birth mother and the husband she had been married to, who was the ex-husband I found, divorced. It was a friendly divorce. They all moved out of town together, and they all decided to reboot their lives and start over in Southern California. And they caravanned out there together, got jobs, new homes, new lives, got kids in school, all that stuff. And my birth mother, who was technically divorced, and he was also, they met new partners, met new people. And my birth mother then had my younger sister, who's 13 years younger than I am. And again, it was a real touch and go pregnancy and delivery. And after my sister was born, she had to have more heart surgery, and it didn't go well. She lived, but not for long. So my young sister basically has no memory of our birth mother, but her dad's in the picture. So she was kept by her dad and his second wife, person he married a few years later.
Wow, that's sad for her. Yeah, I remembered you had said before that she passed away pretty young. And when you're saying your sister's 13 years younger, they wouldn't get much time together.
No, yeah, they didn't have much time together. So, and my birth mother spent a lot of that time not well. So yeah, I don't believe, in so many cases, the birth mothers from those days, were coerced and tricked and whatever. I don't believe that was really the case with my birth mother because of what I've learned from the family. And I feel like people are telling me the truth. She did lack the support. It wasn't so much the society, because she had the family support for the first kid, but again, grandma had some boundaries there and had to draw some boundaries and was helping everybody out once. And I really would have liked to have met the great grandma. I think she was pretty rock and roll lady from what I understand, and pretty cool lady. So.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Lori, you're up next.
Story, and your writing is just always amazing.
Oh, well, thanks.
I enjoy listening to it. I do have just a couple of questions. What ultimately made your father finally tell his family? Was there like a major family event that he finally broke down to wait that many years and then just tell them?
Yeah, there was. You got so many minutes and not enough time to tell everything. He was, his daughter, the other Tammy, had a 5-year-old son. Somebody in her husband's side passed away. They had to go to a family funeral that was like 2 hours away. They dropped the 5-year-old off with the grandparents to be babysat while they go to this family funeral on her husband's side. And she comes back afterwards to pick up her son, my nephew, and says, "Mom and Dad, you're never going to guess what happened at this funeral. It was the craziest thing. You wouldn't believe it." And apparently a long lost, unknown relative showed up and funeral crashed.
Oh.
And that kind of, I think, made him start thinking that I found out in the interim, he had told his wife, but he swore his wife to secrecy. Don't tell the kids. They'll hate me for it. And she went along with that because she was trying to do the right thing, although she thought that was BS, but she was trying to support him. And then she and he, I guess, looked at one another and kind of went, "Well, I think we need to have a little talk." And yeah, because he was at that point, he was like 63 or so, 62, 63, and kind of starting to think about, what if I had enough balls to go search him out in the first place? He didn't know me well enough to know if I was a chicken or if I would funeral crash him. Which, yeah, I'm more of a chicken than not, but he wouldn't have known that.
No, that is pretty amazing. That's another one of those synchronicity things, maybe
It
that
is.
happen for that reason that,
Yeah.
so the wife he was married to at that time was the person he was kind of double dating, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So
and he's got a
how
girl
did
pregnant.
okay, how did she take the news then? And did she accept you? Did she like was there any resentment or?
None. She was totally cool.
Awesome.
She
Awesome.
was, and that's the really neat thing. The other thing I've kind of gotten out of my life knowing them, they are the kind of people that you find out, like at Thanksgiving, for example, that somebody doesn't have a place to be or people to be with. Bring them on over. We always got plenty of food. Here's a plate. Get a spoon. Get in line. There's plenty of turkey. They are that kind of people. Even to this day, the kids are like that too. It's not just like, well, the aunties and the uncles, and that's that. And no, it's whoever needs or wants to be there. The circle's wide open, and it's
Awesome.
very cool. It's a very cool thing. Christmas, Thanksgiving, they don't cut people off. If a friend, you got, a stray friend that doesn't have a place to go, or, they get ditched by whoever they were supposed to be with, and now they've got nobody to be with. Come on over to our house. So it's a really nice way to be. And I try to do that myself. Kind of learned that's, yeah, Nan, yeah. We do that here.
Well, that's cool.
Fremily, right? Fremily. Friends and
Well,
family.
thank you for sharing your story tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lori. Good to see you. Well, sort of see you.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm not dressed well enough to be on camera tonight.
Okay, who's next?
Marcie, I see a question in the chat, and there may be others, but I do see
Yeah.
this.
I'm
Do you
so
feel
busy
that
talking, I don't
do you feel that knowing you were adopted from the beginning, did that make a difference in who you are now?
I'm glad I always knew. I'm glad I didn't have one of those kind of days where I went, shit, what? I never had to deal with that. I'm very thankful that, people were as honest as they could be, because it's just horribly, horribly wrong the other way. It's like almost like an abuse and neglect thing, to not be able to honor your kid with the truth, is at least as best as you know it. I feel like my parents were as truthful as they could be. Do I think they got lied to? Yes, but they weren't lying on purpose to me. They shared what they were told. And because, I found inconsistent information when I went searching. So, to be told your birth parents were married, therefore, don't worry about it. You're not a bastard. Yeah. Right. Little things like that. So. Yeah, truth is a big one. So, yeah, I see messages go in and I'm so
Peter?
busy talking, I don't get to see stuff.
It looks like Peter has his
Peter?
hand up.
Hey, Peter.
Hey, how you doing, Paige?
Real good. Just heard your
yeah.
podcast.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Great to hear your story, and I think I can say for a lot of us here that we're in awe of your reunion. The fact that you get invited to, celebrations.
Yeah. It's heartbreaking when you see on Facebook all these people that are like, I didn't get included, or I got forgotten, or, and it's like, I know those things happen. Those things can happen in non-adoption situations as well, where somebody doesn't get included in a thing, but that adoption having nothing to do with it. But it's just, that's sad when that happens. So I've been very fortunate.
Yeah, I think
I'm a lucky adoptee, but not in that lucky adoptee way. I'm a lucky adoptee because things have actually worked out really, really well.
Yeah, I think it's equality. And I don't have I reunited with 8 siblings, one's now deceased, but I've never been invited to a birthday party or a wedding or anything like that. So you always feel that you're always the outsider.
Yeah.
You're still the bastard.
Yeah.
To be honest.
I mean, and it helps that a bunch of them are here in town, and even the ones that aren't in town, we're just, I don't know. I think we were all, when the reunion initially happened, we were all like young 20 somethings, and we were just up for it. We were ready. We were looking, we wanted friends. We appreciated family. We were just open to having more people in our lives, expanding our world. So just the timing worked.
Yeah, I think the other thing that your story about the how you came to be adopted, and your mother was able to keep an older sibling. I think that just highlights to me that support is the critical thing here. Supporting a mother's
Right.
prevents
Mhm.
mother-child separation, and
Right. And so her
family preservation.
Yeah, they were able to help her once, but people have limits and boundaries, and they just couldn't help her twice. Plus, she couldn't help herself. So, because I'm sure being that sick would have affected her ability to earn a wage. I'm sure that was played into it too. She had to miss a lot of work.
Yeah, I think that had a lot to do with the drop in numbers here in Australia, that we had a supportive, single mothers supportive pension. Single mothers here are supported. It's, I'm not saying they're overcompensated, right? They are supported to a minimum, a basic, that assist them to keep the children. I think that's important. Yeah, I don't have any questions. I'm never good at questions. I'm good at observing. And maybe I've heard so many questions. So yeah. But anyway, great to hear your story, and you've done very well. And look, you're writing. Yeah. There's a question.
Okay.
Are any of your books on Audible, or have you thought about that?
I've thought about it. I'm like a tech stooge, really. I mean, like Beth can attest to that. There's so much I don't know how to do, but I've thought about it. But yeah, so far it's all Amazon.
You have a great voice for an Audible book. So just put that out there.
Teachery voice, I guess.
Probably. All right, I'm gonna mute here. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Good to have you tonight. Okay, do we have any last minute questions or comments for Paige before we close? Anybody want to put their virtual hand up? If not, Paige, we'd like to thank you once again for joining us for Adoption Happy Hour. We enjoyed so much hearing your story. We always appreciate your support in the adoption community. And you want to tell everybody where they can get your books? What's the best way to get your books?
Best way is Amazon. I mean, unless I would love to go to Nashville. When we were talking about that earlier, I was like, oh, I would love to do that because I'll be off work, but it's getting away right now and taking care of my mom. It's kind of a tricky thing. Sure. So, but yeah, if I'm lucky enough to show up at a conference, books obviously are there, but Amazon is the easiest and quickest place to find them. So, and of course, I'll be shouting it from the rooftops when book number 3.
Keep us abreast of that. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again so much. And everybody, let's go ahead and give Paige our signature round of applause for joining us on Happy Hour again. We really appreciate you, Paige. I love you.
Thanks so much, Marcie and Beth and Jennifer by default.
And we appreciate all of you. Oh, Barb, oh, you're waving? Or I didn't know if you had a question. I didn't want to leave you out. Hey, Barb.
Hi, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay.
Represent, good way to represent Paige.
Oh,
Ohio.
thank you.
Woo.
Ohio, woo,
OH.
IO.
We're just cheering for Ohio.
Yeah. OU, oh yeah.
Well, again,
Marcie?
thanks, everybody. Yes.
I do have a picture of our next happy hour guest.
Okay, let's go ahead and share that then. I was going to give the date. I believe that is August the 4th is our next happy hour. Again, it's the 1st and the 3rd Fridays.
This is Terry Champion, and we met Terry at the summit. We actually met her in a couple of weeks prior to that online when she just heard about the summit and she was trying to get a roommate and we were trying to help her and all of that kind of stuff. And then we met her in person at the summit and she will be our guest on the 4th.
Great. Thank you,
She is
Beth.
an adoptee, by the way. Terry is an adoptee.
So we'll be learning all about Terry's story then at our next happy hour. Okay, well, everybody have a safe and cool weekend. Thanks for joining us tonight, and we'll see you back on August the 4th. Night, everybody.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Good to see everyone.